occasion of the briefing is because I launched with the Pakistan ambassador and Antonio Guterres, the High Commissioner for Refugees, this morning, the revised appeal, the revised Humanitarian Action Plan for Pakistan. This is a plan, as I'll mention in a minute, for I think $543 million to deal with the current very severe and dramatic humanitarian situation that has arisen there. The scale and the speed of the displacement we've seen over the last few weeks are really unprecedented, certainly in Pakistan, but also I think in recent memory anywhere. And this situation is a very volatile and fluid one, with new IDPs arriving daily in large numbers. And there are, of course, some, although much smaller numbers, who are starting to begin to return to their places of origin, at least to see conditions for themselves where the military operations appear to be coming to an end. What that means is that during the last 3 weeks, more than 1.9 million people have been newly displaced. And if you add that to the 500,000 people who were already registered as IDPs from the summer 2008 onwards, then it means we're currently faced with 2.4 million IDPs. It's important to be clear that 90% of these, around 90%, are living not in camps, but with host families or in rented accommodation, or sometimes staying in schools or other public buildings. And it's only around 220,000 or so who are currently in the camps. What concerns us is not just those numbers, but the fact that they are still increasing, and if, as the government have suggested, the government of Pakistan have suggested, they also begin military operations in Waziristan at some point in the near future, this could add significantly to these already very high numbers of displaced people. There are, of course, apart from those who are displaced, there are those who are still in the conflict zones, in places like Swat, the Swat Valley. We don't know how many they are. We don't know anything about their condition. We have no access to those conflict zones. So one of the points I made this morning, and I make again now, is that it's very important that all concerned respect international humanitarian law and do all they possibly can to protect civilians and civilian lives, albeit in the difficult circumstances of the conflict that's going on there. We have been putting in place for some time now, obviously, a humanitarian response to this crisis. We've used the cluster system. I won't go into all the details about what the clusters have been doing, but we've been establishing new camps, 12 new camps in the last 3 weeks, delivering food, providing nutrition and therapeutic feeding for children and women, particularly pregnant and lactating women in IDP camps. On the health side, deploying both mobile health teams and static health clinics for the IDP camps. On the water and sanitation side, we're providing at the moment 4.1 million litres of water a day to 175,000 people in the camps, and we've already built 6,400 latrines and 3,000 bathing spaces. And one of the problems in the camps, obviously, is the extreme temperatures that there are there at the moment, between 42 and 48 degrees. These are not temperatures that the people in those camps are used to. They come from the higher valleys, where the temperatures are much more moderate, so this is causing significant problems. And of course we are approaching the monsoon season before too long as well, which means that there are extra health risks. And the other main activity on the cluster side has been the education cluster, creating emergency primary schools to support, give some kind of education to the many children in the camps, 10,000 at the moment, because some kind of education is part of some kind of at least semblance of normality for children in these circumstances, and of course a very high proportion of the displaced are indeed children. So we're already doing quite a lot, but we recognise that we need to scale up this effort very significantly in line with the scale of and the speed of the displacement. And if we're going to do that successfully, we're going to need additional resources, which is why the appeal is for $543 million. That's to cover the period from now, or last Friday when it was launched actually, until the end of December 2009. This is based on a planning figure of just over 1.5 million people, of whom we are assuming that 1.36 million will be displaced and 200,000 more would be in need of assistance in our home areas. Now, as you can see, that planning figure is not the same as the actual figure of IDPs, but that's because we are taking trying to take some kind of reasonable view over the next few months of how many people might be displaced at any one time. But it also takes into account the efforts of others, notably the Pakistan government, the Pakistani authorities, to help people, and they're making a very large effort as well, and also our ability to assist, given the security problems in some of these areas. At the moment, we're very short of resources. This plan is on top of a previous, or is a revised version of a previous humanitarian response plan. And even taking into account the contributions to that previous plan, we've only got 21% of the funding we need, and we have many gaps across some of the key sectors. Virtually everywhere you look, there are very significant gaps, including food, nutrition, health, water and sanitation, and shelter. So at the moment we have about $118 million which have been contributed to this 543 million altogether, and 17 million of those have come from the Central Emergency Response Fund. As I say, our view is that this is not remotely sufficient. We cannot sustain the effort we are making at the moment for more than another month without some new and significant resources being contributed by the donors. As I say, the most immediate needs are fairly self-evident. They are food, shelter, cooking utensils, water and sanitation facilities, and health services, and these are all in need of funding. And we are particularly concerned again about the very high temperatures and the monsoon fast approaching. One of the other things we need to do is to keep on trying to make sure the registration process of these IDPs is as accurate and as valid as it can be. So there's a task of verification of these figures which is underway at the same time. So the background is very large needs, significant funding needs, inability to go on helping unless we get some new funding quickly. As I say, we're not the only people engaged in this. The Pakistani authorities, Pakistani families in the area, host families, local communities are responding extraordinarily generously. These are very poor people themselves to start with. But of course the strain that puts on the host communities is also very high, and that's why even they will come to need assistance very shortly if we don't see large-scale returns soon.